This is the Wealthability for CPAs show. Better clients, better practice, better life. Here's Tom Wheelwright.
Great leadership comes from being who you are, not from being who you think you should be. Welcome to the Wealthability Show. I'm your host, Tom Wheelwright, and today we're going to discover how to create a system for doing this. How do you be yourself and at the same time be the most successful self you can be and turn that into business success as well? Certainly more important than ever for CPAs as we have fewer and fewer people coming up, more important than ever as we have technology coming after our industry. And we're very fortunate to have on the show Gary Cooper, who wrote the book, The Success Paradox, How to Surrender and Win in Business and in Life. And I'm just very grateful to have you, Gary, on the show, because this is something that it's a hard thing for our audience, I think, to just be comfortable with who we are and then actually really focus at that point, how do we serve others? So welcome to the show, Gary.
Thank you, Tom. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
So if you would, just in 30 seconds or so, tell us why you wrote this book. What kind of got you going in this area?
Tom, I had a life-changing event. I was a very driven entrepreneur over and over and over again, built and sold 7 companies, 2 publicly traded or private equity companies, and the math was adding up, but it wasn't adding up for my life. And then our best friend's kid committed suicide, and I think I was always comparing myself to others. And I think what ultimately happened to that child was the same thing. And I saw I had to start doing things differently.
So give us the premise. You talk about the success paradox, and we're taught, like you read Good to Great, or, you read these leadership books, and a lot of them seem to be, well, be this way. And you talk about, no, you really need to understand who you are first, and before you can ever do, any of those other things. Why do you think that's so important?
Well, it's important because I had lived my life the way I was taught, the way most of us are taught, at least for guys, at least from my standpoint. Don't cry, boy. Work harder. If the going gets tough, dig in deeper. And so I dug in deeper. I did exactly what I was taught. I went to college, went to graduate school, started my own company. It was, I worked harder. I pulled all-nighters. I did what it took. I grinded. I drove 60,000 miles a year. I jogged 50 or 60 miles a week. And I overcame all the obstacles, and I built these companies. And I also took enormous risk. I almost lost my house multiple times. I built a company with my father. He was my father, my founder, and my financier. And at 28, we were doing $25 million in revenue, had an $8 million loan, and he dies. And then 9/11 happens, and then the bank calls all my loans due in full. Well, what do? You work harder, boy. You want to be the hero. All the movies we watch on TV, you want to be the hero. So I did exactly what we're taught. And things worked out great. On paper, I had the house, I had the girl, I had the children, I had the cars, I had the checking accounts. But I was exhausted. And so what I did is I would double down on my bet.
Sure.
I would go start another business. I would go do more because I didn't have an off switch. And so I didn't know who I was. I thought who I was what I did. I didn't know who I was. I was a human doing versus a human being. I thought that my job was to go out and risk every day, work hard. I didn't know that I was also a father, a son, a husband, a community leader. I really didn't know what I liked because I thought my job was to, I thought I was defined by what I did, how much I produced. I thought my worth was by how much I made versus how much I meant to my loved ones, how much I meant to myself, how much I meant to others, to my mother, to my siblings. And so it took a real hard beating for me to wake up and understand that. And I hope this book helps people that don't have to run their life into. I felt a little bit like Wile E. Coyote in the Roadrunner. I had to jump off the cliff and fall down and hit the pavement like Wile E. Coyote. And what I hope is that uh, your listeners, typically CPAs, is that right?
Yeah, a lot of CPAs, financial world. Yep.
I hope that they aren't the crazy entrepreneur that I am, and they don't jump off the cliff like Wile E. Coyote and hit the pavement. I hope they say, "Whoa, let me learn from this guy's mistakes."
Yeah, so that's an interesting one because, of course, we have what's fondly referred to as tax season or busy season, and
Uh-huh.
a lot of people work 60, 70,
Crazy,
80 crazy
crazy hours.
hours, crazy hours. And, I, for one, I decided a long time ago, I'm not willing, I don't want to do that. And I
Hmm.
actually built a CPA firm where I work 10 hours a week and do really well with it. So I did do the opposite of that. I'm going, yeah, I'm not going to put all those hours in to do that. I'm
And
going
the audit partners. Oh my
Well,
gosh.
exactly. I mean, it's and they work their staff to death. I think this is part of why we have such a backlash among young people right now is quiet quitting, and I don't want to go into the office. And there was so much pressure to do it one way. And did anybody ever stop to think, is that the only way? Is there a better way to do it? So when you had this crisis, so you talk about how you started doing the opposite of what you thought you should do. And one of those things you talk about is figuring out who you are and really becoming authentic. How do you? I mean, that's a hard thing to do. That's a lot of personal development. That's lot of personal insight. How do you actually go about deciding? Well, who am I really? What do I really want?
Well, I started investing time in it. I knew how to invest time into developing professional skills. And so I decided to treat my life like a business. So I wrote a mission, vision, and values for my life. I wrote a 1 year, 3 year, 5 year plan for my life. I treated me like a business. And I started investing time with preachers, with spiritual people, with with people that had what I wanted. They had that inner calm and that peace. So you go, if you want to learn how to fish, you go hang out on the dock. So I started hanging out on the dock with people that had what I wanted. So I had to associate with friends or experts in those fields. So I didn't shy away from therapy. I didn't shy away from medical help. I didn't shy away from anything that would help me develop my own personal well being. So I had to, somebody said, you only have to change one thing. And I said, what's that? And they said, everything. Because I had chased the American dream the way we're taught, like those audit partners. Hey, give us your best 20 years of your life and you can become partner, right?
Right.
So that's what I did. I gave to the entrepreneur, I gave my best 20 years of my life and I became very successful. And what I decided to do is I fired myself as the CEO of our company. the company that I founded with some partners. And then I decided that I was going to serve my company. So I was the chairman, but I decided to invest all I could in becoming the best individual I could be, but then serving them, and how can I make them the most successful they could be in their careers? And so that's what I did. How could he be the best CEO? And then I put in incentive plans and financial plans and all that for them personally.
So
Did you have a question?
Yeah, I do. I want to talk about this. You talk about, okay, so I decided I'm going to serve them. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And you say that that's where success comes from, is really from focusing on serving serving others, whether it's serving, like you said, your employees, your customers, and serving them. How does that create the success? Because, don't you have to figure out who you are first? Don't you have to know, okay, this is what I want, and then you have to, and then you go and serve other people?
Well, we kind of like changed the engine out while we were driving down the road, right? So I was learning myself, and then the company, we had a company running at the same time. It wasn't like I could do, just evacuate. So what we did is we hired a business coach. And so the business coach was helping me learn how to be the chairman and the CEO be the CEO. And what we did is we got the business a new mission, vision, and values at the same time. And I was uninvited. And I was really happy about that. And that was hard. It was really hard, but letting go was part of my personal growth. And it was also part of the growth for the company. And the way I viewed it is I like to use analogies. My children would have never grown personally if they wouldn't have left home and gone to college. So I thought about it, my business that way. I had to let my company go to college. The CEO had to learn how to make mistakes. He had to learn to make his own decisions. The company did as well. So the company developed their own mission, vision, and values. I had to learn how to set some strategy, but not all the tactics and all the decision making and all the stuff. I had to set some boundaries with budgetary things, but I didn't have to tell them how to get there. They defined their own core values. I got to approve them. Turns out they did a better job than I would have done. And so I was allowed the freedom to go develop my own path while the company developed its own path.
So were you ever concerned about them taking a path that was completely contrary to what you wanted that path to be?
Well, the beauty was, the CEO that we chose, had worked with me for 20 years, and he was our CFO. He started out as a controller driving a Toyota Corolla, and now he's a very successful, very financially successful guy that has worked for me and with me for a very long time. And so we've been able to make 30 people financially successful, a lot of them multimillionaires, in our company that we started together. And so, I tell people a lot of times that, Elon Musk and all the people that we view as heroes of our economy, a lot of them are geniuses. They just are. I'm not. I think one of the reasons for my success is I haven't been greedy. We have shared the wealth with the people who have created it. And so that's another reason why I was able to take the time to work on myself and it wasn't like I was just, out to lunch. I was there, but I was letting go. And why do we hire smart people to begin with? We hired them because they were smart, because they can make decisions. But if I look back at why my previous companies were limited in their success, I was the reason.
Mm.
I wasn't letting go.
So how do you do that? I mean, CPAs especially, right, tend to be A students, right? So A students, we like success. We like being right. How do you do that? How do you get comfortable with, hey, I know they're smart. I'm going to let them go. And that's going to actually make it bigger. How'd you get there? I mean, I know you were you feel like you were forced into it, but you still had to do it. And that couldn't have been easy.
It wasn't easy. And what I would tell you is the more self-confident I got in my own self-esteem and self-confidence, the more confidence I had in letting go. And that is kind of a paradox, right? The less confidence I have in myself, the more control I want to have.
Right.
And so, the numbers prove it. And it really is weird. The less in control I felt, the more control I wanted to have.
That makes sense. Actually,
that
makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I mean, we feel out of control, so we want control. We see it going on in the world today. People feel out of control, so they like to, but figure out how to get more control.
You grab control in other places in your life.
Exactly.
So what we did is, I think what the book shows you is the more we invest in our own personal emotional health, it actually creates a profitable bottom line. And that's something that I never put two and two together. Because then I was able to spend time, real time, with the CEO. And I call it looking around the corner. We could not just look at last month's P&L. We could look at where do we need to be spending our investment for next quarter, next year? Where could we spend some time in training for our employees, our management, our leadership? What would be a good investment that could give us the best return on our employees and our leadership that would pay dividends for the company? And I can give you example after example. And a lot of them are soft investments. They're investments in people. A good example, Corona happened. The third day we gave everybody $1,000. That was $1 million decision. And people were like, why are you giving this to us? And we're like, because your husband or your wife or your partner is going to get laid off and you're going to need childcare. And they're like, holy cow, you guys care. So that was just a simple little soft decision. It was a real dollars decision, but our turnover, our engagement, all those scores dramatically increased because we were watching the fine tuning of our company.
So, if you're in that day to day and you're really driving towards that success, I mean, honestly, I found the same with me. I mean, we are far more successful that now that I'm spending 10 hours a week than when I spent 60 hours a week. Far more successful because I have a manager who's my partner who manages it is way better at managing it than I ever could be. I mean, because I'm not good at it. I'm never going to be good at it. I don't want to be good at it.
Me either.
She's a natural at it. She's so good at it. People come and they want to work with her. They may come because of my reputation, but when they meet her, they go, oh, I want to be here. I want to be with this person. You know what I'm talking about.
I resemble that comment.
So I do see the results but it is a paradox. It's like you're saying that if I actually step back, let my people give them strategic direction and let them run, we're going to be better off than if I'm in there day after day, kind of pushing at them.
Yeah, it's kind of like, so I was sitting on a couch in a preacher's office, just flat busted. I'd had back surgery and 2 hip replacements, and I needed another hip replacement. My body was just shot. And I had worked all those hours, driven all those miles, and actually run all those miles as well. And he said, if you want to be productive, you have to rest. And I looked at the buddy beside me and I said, he only works on Sundays. and, and the preacher said, I heard you, Gary. I'm like right here. and I had no idea how much preachers actually work. They get called for deaths, weddings, yep. Embezzling money from a company. I mean, they're always called. And he said, well, what do you do? And I said, man, I pull all-nighters, I do what it takes. I grind, blah, blah, blah. And he's looking at me with this puzzled look. And I'm sitting there in like pajama pants and a t-shirt, basically crying on his couch. And he said, how's that working out for you, Gary? And I'm like, not so good. I'm sitting there busted, And he said, Gary, if you really want to be productive, you have to rest. And he showed me this pendulum and he said, if you only rest this much, the law of gravity, if a pendulum only goes back this much, you can only work this much. He said, and he said, if you do caffeine and nicotine and alcohol or whatever, he said, just like any engine, if you push an engine too far, it's going to break eventually. He said, so your relationships with your family are going to break, your body's going to break, the relationship with the people you work with is going to break. He said, so you have to rest. So I went in my office that day. I looked at my office, there was like 25 unfinished projects. So a year and a half later, I didn't think anything about it. I started taking naps in the middle of the day. A year and a half later, I go back into my office and there's nothing on my desk. And I walk in, the CEO, my friend, David, I said, man, I don't have anything to do. And he said, you're not supposed to, idiot. And I was like, oh, I forgot, excuse me. He said, go read a book, man. Just go home. And what I realized is what you and I were talking about is by resting, I also had to say no to things that were none of my damn business to begin with. No to projects, no to entrepreneurial endeavors that I wanted to be part of because they were cool, but I really didn't have any business in being in. Like I'm in the healthcare business, but I was into banks, hotels, real estate, you name it. And so I read this quote. Now I'll kind of end this part on this. A magnifying glass is so simple, but it can take the sun and catch grass and paper and wood on fire just by focusing. And just by focusing on one business, we went from 20 million to 500 million in a couple of years.
Wow. That's impressive.
Just by saying no to those other things and resting and focusing.
Well, it does remind me of the famous Warren Buffett quote where he said that he became a millionaire by saying yes and became a billionaire by saying no. And
wow.
I think that was very powerful when I heard that, because I have a tough time, like you. I have a tough time saying no. It's very hard because you got where you were saying yes. And so but you're not going to get to where you want to be until you start saying no. And I think that's a good lesson. So if you could you share 2 or 3 maybe pieces of advice or things that you think a business owner could do to really make a difference in their life and in how successful their business becomes?
So in life, behaviors are hard to change. And so here's how I think about the behaviors. I kept the same behaviors up like I would play tennis with an old racket. And I kept playing with the old racket thinking that it was going to get better. So I had to get rid of my old racket and replace it. So I had to replace my old behaviors that made me successful to begin with. Because the old behaviors weren't working, just like the old racket wasn't working. I can't rely on the old racket anymore. So the old behaviors that made me successful quit working. So I can give you one example. I used to be the guy that would get in the car and go do sales myself. So we hired 30 salespeople and we trained them to be the salespeople and brought in a guy from pharma and hired him to be the chief sales officer. I had the knowledge and expertise, but I'm 51 years old. I don't need to be in a car carrying a bag anymore. But my ego told me that I needed to be in the car because I'm important and people need to see me. They don't need to see me. So get rid of the old racket. Those behaviors aren't serving you anymore. In the business, I think the most important thing that I think David and I have learned is we've worked very, very hard to check our egos and call each other out on it when they keep popping back up. And that is very hard. And I can give you an example. So I was the chairman, but I was still acting as the co-CEO. And I didn't realize it. So we're in a meeting, it's during Corona, and we're setting up a website. And it's me and David in the same room, chairman and CEO in the same room with his senior leadership team. And I start doing a lot of the talking. And I'm waving my hands like I'm waving right now. And I look at everybody looking at me, and I can close my eyes and picture everybody's face saying, who's the flipping boss here? And I called myself out of the room. And I looked at Dave and I said, I have to move out of this building. It's not enough. We just had a leadership change. I cannot even be in the building. And he said, maybe you could just talk less. And I said, I'm not like one of these circus monkeys that claps their hands when you need me to. He was using me for my strengths, which is I'm a strong I on the disc profile, and he is a strong D with 0 I. So he liked me for my entertainment qualities, but he didn't want me to make any decisions. And that's not fair to me. And I wasn't fair to him because I was entertaining people, but he didn't want to follow any of my decisions. And that put me and him at loggerheads. And so I had to call myself out. And he needs to have the ability to call me out. And that has to filter throughout the entire organization. So we have a scorecard system that and the ability to call each other out on our egos.
No, I love that. Actually, I've actually heard 3 things that I just love here. And I kind of want to wrap up with this. One is get rid of the old racket. I think that's just a great analogy. Get rid of the old racket, get rid of the old habits, get rid of the old behaviors. Second is, I heard is check your ego. Okay. And if you need somebody else to help you check your ego, get somebody else to help you check your ego. But related to that, but I love this, is leave the building. And one of the reasons I love that is because my partner asked me to leave the building 15 years ago. And it's just been the best thing because I'm very disruptive when I'm there.
Me too.
I'm going to disrupt things. I constantly want change. I love change. And I always got new ideas. Okay. So literally 15 years ago, my partner said, Tom, why don't you work from home? Set up a nice office in your home. And then you can come in when we need you, come in for a staff meeting once a month, or you can come, do some training, et cetera. But otherwise, probably best if you're not here on a daily basis. And that was actually one of the most successful decisions I've ever made, was to leave the building. So I love those. The book is The Success Paradox: How to Surrender and Win in Business and Life. I love the idea of it. Congratulations to you, Gary, for the success that it's brought you. And I can speak to the same thing. I mean, when I stopped working so much in the business and really started focusing more on the strategy of the business and serving my partner, serving the staff, and most of all, serving the clients, that what I found is I was making way more money. And of course, when you make money the right way, you actually end up paying way less tax, which is one of our slogans. But you also end up with, I think, better clients and a better practice, a better business, and a better life. And I want to thank Gary Cooper. Gary, how else, besides the book, how else can we find more about your work?
Well, you can go to Palmetto Infusion is the name of our company. And you can go to Amazon.com and find Success Paradox, or you can go to GaryC.Cooper.com. There's another guy named Gary Cooper that's a little more famous than me. He was an actor. So you have to do
not any better, but not
Cooper.
any better looking than you, Gary. So
I don't know, man. He was pretty cool. I knew it was a pretty cool movie with Grace Kelly. So
for sure. Thank you, Gary. Thanks, everyone. Remember, it's all about being authentic with ourselves, and then we can serve others. And when we do, we end up with a better practice. Better clients, a better practice, and better life. We'll see y'all next time. Thanks.
You've been listening to the Wealthability for CPAs show. Better clients, better practice, better life. To learn more, go to wealthability.com.